The Chitrik Academy is dedicated in loving memory of Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Chitrik.
Welcome to part 2 of the evolution of the Torah. In today's lesson, we will discuss what happened at Mount Torah. Let us begin. Mount Torah, as we can see, was in the year 2448 of the Jewish calendar. And this is when we received the luchos. We received the tablets, and we received the entire Torah. So let us see. We know that the luchos were given, and we read, on Shavuos, we read the Aseret Adibris. We said the 10 commandments were given. But the truth is, all 613 mitzvahs were given at Mount Torah. At Mount Sinai, when Hashem gave us the Torah, He gave us all 613 commandments. Not only the 10 commandments, not only the Aseret Adibris. So why do we make such a hype of the Aseret Adibris? And the truth is, most people you ask, what was given, Jews and non-Jews alike, if you ask what was given at Mount Sinai, what was given at Mount Torah, they'll say the 10 Commandments, because that's what they see, that we always have this picture of the luchos, we always have this picture of the tablets that Moshe Rabbeinu received, and there are only 10 commandments on them. The question is, why 10? Why not all 613? So the answer is as follows. These 10 commandments, these 10 categories, are actually 10 categories. They're not just 10 commandments, they're categories that represent all 613 commandments. For example, there's the commandment of Shabbos, keeping Shabbos, which has all the laws of Shabbos in it. But it also is a category which includes all the time-bound mitzvahs, all the commandments that are time-bound. For example, all the Yom Tovim, Shavuos, Sukkot, Pesach, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, any mitzvah which is time-bound. It also includes mitzvahs, any type of time-bound mitzvahs, not necessarily a holiday. Now let's give another example. There's one of the mitzvahs are not to murder, not to kill. So this includes similar mitzvahs. For example, watching someone else being killed is also included in this category of murder. What's also included is the prohibition to embarrass someone else, because it's like killing them. You're causing blood to rush. Our sages say you're causing blood to rush to their face or from their face, so that's considered murder. So these 10 commandments that we mentioned are general commandments, but we received all 613 mitzvahs at Mount Torah, at Mount Sinai. There are two other things that were given as well. It's one thing, which is we're dividing it into two categories, which now we're going to discuss the oral Torah, Torah Sheba'al Peh. Until now we discussed the 613 mitzvahs, which is a written Torah, and now we are going to discuss the oral Torah, the tradition that was given along with it. So the first one is Torah for Dummies, just explaining these mitzvahs that Hashem gave to us, explaining how to do some of these mitzvahs. For example, the mitzvah Tefillin is one of the mitzvahs which it says in the Torah, one of the 613 commandments. However, what it says in the Torah, it doesn't say that they need to be black. It doesn't say that they need to be square. All these details are called Halacha Moshe Misinai. They were tradition, the oral tradition which Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu. He actually told him, this that I said, I want men to put on tefillin, I want it to look like this. So it's sort of a Torah for dummies. So that's one of the things that was given, is just an explanation on different mitzvahs. The second category that was given is guidelines. They were given guidelines, which means certain mitzvahs Hashem said, these are the general rules of the mitzvah, and I'm going to give you 13 different guidelines to use that I want you to interpret what the correct law will be. So let's go over that again. Certain things we were actually explained. For example, tefillin, we were explained how Hashem wants us to do it. And certain things we were given guidelines, 13 guidelines, that Hashem says, I want you, the sages of Israel, to work out, using these 13 guidelines, what the correct thing, how the mitzvah should be done. And there may be many answers. You can have times that the laws, certain rabbis will say one way, certain rabbis will do another way, will say another way. However, using these 13 guidelines, we can come to a conclusion what the halacha is. For example, these are the two things, and let's just bring an example for what we just mentioned. There, the Gemara tells us of a story of how Rabbi Lazar was once arguing with all his friends, all the other rabbis, about a certain law. And he was very determined that the law should be like as he understood it. However, they said that according to the guidelines that they understand, the law should be different. And he was very determined, and he said, if the law follows my opinion, then may this tree which is over here be moved to a very faraway place. And the tree moved. They said, I'm sorry, Torah is not in heaven. The Torah was given to us with these guidelines, and we are supposed to determine using these guidelines, what Hashem wants. And he kept bringing other things. He said he saw a stream of water. He said, you see the stream of water is flowing from north to south. If the law should follow me, it will start flowing from south to north. And that's what happened. However, they disagreed and said, I'm sorry, Torah is not in heaven. Once God gave us the Torah, and he told us, these mitzvahs, these commandments, I want you to use your own judgment through using my 13 principles, my 13 guidelines, then the law follows us. And he said, if I'm correct, let a voice come from heaven and say that I'm correct. And also they all heard a voice saying that Rabbi Lazar is correct. However, they're adamant and they said, no, Torah is not in heaven. The Torah, when God gave the Torah, he said, once I give it to you, I want you to use my guidelines and decide the law. And that was it. The next day, one of the rabbis was walking and he saw Eliyahu Navi, he saw Elijah the prophet. And he asked Eliyahu Navi, what was going on in heaven? What was Hashem's reaction when this whole discussion was going on? And Eliyahu Navi said, Hashem smiled and says, Nitzchuni b'ni nitzchuni. You have won, my child. Hashem was happy. Meaning, certain things Hashem says that you should follow what the rabbis say using the guidelines he gave. And one of these guidelines are Achnei Rabim Lahatis. You go after the majority. So if the majority of rabbis explained the law one way, even if Rabbi Lazar was a great person and he explained the law the other way, however, because one of these 13 principles is that you go after the majority, that is why we follow the majority. This is an illustration to explain a little bit how these 13 principles work. Now let's move on to something else. We just spoke about the oral Torah, that there's an oral tradition given as well. We explained oral tradition is A, halach Moshe Sinai, certain laws they were told exactly how they should be done. And B is that certain laws we were told that the rabbis should use the 13 guidelines to try to interpret. But how do we know that the oral tradition was given? Throughout the generations, there were always different groups of people. There were the Karayim, the Kutim, Baitusim, Tzedaikim. There are always different groups who denied the oral Torah. They denied the fact that Hashem explained different things in the Torah and denied the fact that Hashem gave the rabbis permission to try to interpret different parts of the Torah. They denied the fact that the guidelines were ever given. And this idea throughout the many generations always came up. So how do we know that the oral Torah was given? So there are actually three different answers to this. There are three ways to answer this. Number one is tradition. Number two is logic. Number three is an actual proof. Let's go through these. Let's begin with tradition. We as the Jewish people have an extremely strong, reliable tradition. Our tradition goes back, our religion goes back for thousands of years, and our tradition is unmatched for the accuracy of all the stories in our history. One of the things is our Torah. The Torah scroll is the exact to the letter of the Torah that was written by Moses in the year 2448. Throughout the world, wherever you go in the world, any Sefer Torah you open up is written the exact same way. Even though the Jews were spread out throughout the entire world over hundreds and thousands of years, our tradition has been so strong that you could walk into any synagogue and the Torah scroll will be exactly the same to the letter. So that shows how strong our tradition is. So number one, it's like many things we know in Judaism, is that our tradition. We have a tradition that when Hashem gave the Torah, He also gave the oral Torah with it. Also, next reason is logic. It's logical that when you receive something, you get a manual with it. When you buy a computer, you get a manual how to use it. Whenever you buy something, you always get a manual. So if Hashem gave us a Torah and many things are not understood, it must say that Hashem gave a manual with it as well. He gave it a tradition how to keep these laws. For example, the laws of Shabbat, the laws of Shabbos. All the Torah says is that on Shabbos, Kol melechas aveda leisasu. You should not do work on Shabbos. But what is considered work? Is carrying considered work? Is driving considered work? What is considered work? The Torah doesn't tell us. There must have been a tradition going along with it. Another example is tefillin we mentioned. Tefillin, it just says in the Torah, Ukshartem lo'is al yedecha, you should tie for a sign on your hand, v'yu l'totafais beinenecha, and they should be as totafais between your eyes. What does that mean? Does that mean you should get a tattoo on your arm? What does it mean to tie a sign to your arm? How do we know that it looks like this? How do we know what it means at all? There must have been an explanation given. A third example, the laws of Brit Milah, circumcision. How do we know what it means? The Torah tells us you should circumcise the arla. What is an arla? There's a law in the Torah that when a person has a fruit tree, the first 3 years he may not benefit from the fruits because it's called arla, and only in the 4th year he can benefit from the fruits. So what does it mean to cut off the arla? Cut fruit? What does that mean? On the 8th day that a boy is born, he should cut the arla. What does that mean? There's also a verse that says, a pasuk that says, Umoles arla savavchem. You should cut off the arla of your heart. So what does that mean? Every 8-day-old boy used to have open heart surgery. What does this mean? There must have been a tradition with it. There must have been explanation given. And number 3, we have a proof where it speaks about the laws of shechita, the laws of how to slaughter animals. It says, V'zavachta, you should slaughter them, kasher tzivisicha, as I have commanded you. Hashem is saying, God is saying, slaughter animals as I have commanded you. If you look throughout the entire Torah, it doesn't say anywhere how to slaughter an animal. But the Torah says, kasher tzivisicha, as I have commanded you. This is a proof that there must have been an oral tradition how to slaughter animals. There must have been an oral tradition with it as well. So this is where we are holding. This is what took place in Matan Torah. Matan Torah, we received all 613 mitzvahs. That was the Torah Shebeksav, the written Torah, and we received Torah Shebal Peh, the oral Torah, which is divided into 2 parts. There is how to do different mitzvahs. We are told different things. That's Halacha Moshe Misinai. And then there is the other part, is that we were given the rules how to learn and how to interpret different laws of the Torah. And this is the end of part 2 of the evolution of Torah.